Hello, Rocket fans, and welcome back to the Toledo Rockets podcast. So, this is the first episode since the Boca Raton Bowl, and we're going to get started talking about that. And we're going to have some recruiting news and then talk a little bit about men's and women's basketball at the end. All right. So, first of all, you all know the Toledo Rockets defeated Liberty 21-19 in the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl on Tuesday evening. Overall, the offensive line played a pretty solid game for Toledo. And they really wore down Liberty's defense in the fourth quarter. And Toledo's running game was pretty much unstoppable the last couple of drives of the game. This was a refreshing surprise. And, I had talked before about how having some extra time, before the bowl game could help to fix some of the issues on the line. Um, it was interesting. The very first play on offense, there was a false start, or it was too many men in the backfield. One of the offensive tackles was lined up too far behind the line of scrimmage, and I was like, "Oh boy, here we go again." But I don't think they were called for another penalty the entire game, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that, but really, the penalties were very low, and the play overall was good, especially in that fourth quarter. It was obvious that Liberty's defense was run down. I know their star defensive end was a little hurt in that fourth quarter. That might have affected it some as well, but the offensive line played really well. So definitely have to give a shout out to the entire Toledo offensive line for how they played in that game. The UT defense also played very well, and the secondary kept Liberty wide receiver Demario Douglas in check throughout the entire game. Just looking at the stats here, he had just 6 receptions for 16 yards. His longest reception was a 5-yard catch. Um, the Rockets also kept him in check on punt returns and kick returns. I believe he had, excuse me, sorry, I'm still getting over a little bit of a sickness here. But I believe he had one punt return for like 1 yard, and then he had a couple of kick returns, averaged like 15 yards on each return. So this is a dynamic receiver, dynamic punt and kick returner for Liberty. And Toledo did a great job of keeping him in check. And that was a big part of the game as well. They kept Liberty's offense off the field a lot. Toledo's offense was on the field a lot of time of possession, and that helped the offensive line to wear down the Liberty defense. So that was really good. And when we go into looking at the offense, like I said, the running game played really well, especially in the fourth quarter. And, how about Florida native Jaquez Stewart playing in his home state, playing in front of a lot of family and friends, and 23 rushes for 111 yards. He didn't get in the end zone, but he had a great game. He really did. And, he's a player that has a potential to be really, really good in the next couple of years for Toledo. They have, a really good 3-headed running back system. Micah Kelly and Penny Boone, are also good, solid running backs. But there's something about when Jaquez Stewart is in the game. He seems to have that extra spark, that speed burst and toughness. And he ran the ball really well in this game. And you got hats off for him. He played a great game. Passing. We've talked about this before, that Daquan Finn and even Tucker Gleason, when he's in the game, that they spread the ball around to different receivers. And that's what we saw today, or I shouldn't say today, but Tuesday. 8 different receivers caught passes for Toledo from Daquan Finn. He completed 16 passes and 8 different receivers and 16 passes. He was 16 of 24 for 133 yards and a touchdown. And he also ran for a score. Not eye-popping numbers, but he played very solid, didn't really make mistakes, and did, enough to have Toledo win the game, to get the points that they needed. And the defense played well, and Toledo won the game. They're their first win in a bowl game since playing in the Boca Raton Bowl in 2015 when they beat Temple. So, after I think it was 4 bowl games in a row where they came up short, it was great to see the team seemed really dialed in and prepared for this game, and they just played well. So, great way to end the season. And now it's time to start working in the off season and get ready for next year. So as we think about next year, let's look at signing day. The first day of the early signing period opened up on Wednesday, and Toledo signed 16 players. This includes a few transfers, and I want to get into looking at those players here first. Defensive end Travion Ford, 6'4", 240-pound defensive end from Missouri. He'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining at Toledo. He was a 4-star prospect and the highest rated player in Missouri's 2021 recruiting class. So the highest rated player in their recruiting class. And he's coming to Toledo. We've talked a lot about him in the last couple of weeks here, or a week or so, since the transfer portal opened, and then he committed to Toledo. And he made it official on Wednesday signing, and he's the type of player that can come in and make an impact right away on the defensive line for Toledo. And with a few seniors on the team this year, there's going to be a spot open that he can step up and get playing time right away and make an impact. Another transfer is wide receiver Sean Munnerlin. He's 6'5", 210 pounds. He transferred from Rutgers. He's originally from Independence High School in Columbus, Ohio. He'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining at Toledo. He suffered a season-ending injury at the start of the 2021 season and missed the entire season with the injury. So that was, a medical redshirt year. And then he seemed to fall behind on the depth chart in 2022. He's got good size, 6'5", 210 pounds. He's a guy that can play wide receiver. He can also play tight end. When he was recruited to Rutgers out of high school, some people thought he was going to go in as a tight end, but he ended up being recruited as a wide receiver. And it looks like that's what Toledo is doing. But Toledo also likes to use a guy that's kind of a tight end in a receiving role, like they've done with Jamal Turner. And I think he could fit in well as a replacement for Turner, who's a senior, in that receiving tight end part of Toledo's offense. So he was a 4-star prospect by ESPN coming out of high school. So another former 4-star prospect that Toledo has gotten through the transfer portal. And then the other transfer is a junior college transfer. And this is defensive back Micah Cherry, 6'3", 175 pounds. He's from Pearl River Community College, and he'll have 2 years of eligibility remaining. He's expected to play cornerback at Toledo, but can also play safety. And I got to say, his size and just the way he looks on the field reminds me a lot of Zach Ford, who's a current safety here at Toledo. Again, good size, 6'3", 175 pounds, a little skinny. But again, he's built a lot like Zach Ford is. So I could see him playing safety. I can also see him playing corner. Toledo has a couple of really good corners in Quinyon Mitchell and Chris McDonald. And Cherry's a guy that can come in and bring meaningful playing time as well in the secondary. So be exciting to see him right away in the fall and even in the spring for spring practices. The other 13 players that signed were all high school players. So they are guys that'll come in as freshmen. Amari Garrett committed just a couple of days, about a day or two before signing day. And he's a 5'11", 180-pound cornerback from St. Petersburg, Florida. He'll be joining wide receiver Julian Ellen from Clearwater, Florida, and defensive tackle Wayne Pert, who is a 6'4", 285-pound defensive tackle from Pembroke, Fines, Florida. So those three are three players coming in new from the state of Florida. Just played a bowl game out of the state of Florida. It's an area that Toledo has recruited well. We talk about Quinyon Mitchell, Jaquez Stewart, and so on and so on. There's so many good players that have played at Toledo over the years, and especially more recently from the state of Florida. Toledo's done a really good job of recruiting that area, and they bring in three more freshmen in this class that can be really good dynamic players. Um, you know, a wide receiver, a defensive back, and then a really big defensive tackle, a guy coming right out of high school, and he's already 6'4", 285 pounds. You get him bulked up a little bit more with muscle in the weight program in college, and he has the potential to really be a stud on the defensive line. So one other player I want to talk about in this recruiting class is R.J. Johnson III. He is the only QB signed. He's from Atlanta, Georgia, 6'2", 200 pounds. He was first team All-State as a senior, and he is 9th all-time in the state of Georgia for career passing yards with 9,979 yards. Really, his sophomore, junior, and senior seasons were very good. I think his sophomore year was the year that he really came out, sophomores in high school, and just, busted onto the scene with some great numbers. And he's a guy that can really throw it, but he's also got some mobility to him too. So really excited to see what he can do at Toledo in his career. Obviously, he's coming in as just a freshman, so it's going to take some time to develop, but he has the potential to be a really good quarterback for Toledo. So in the description, I'm going to put a link to the full signing list on the UT official website. That'll be in the description. And if you haven't seen it, you can click on that link and it'll take you to the brief story they have in the list of players that signed. Again, there were 16 players that signed. There's some offensive linemen. I think there's 3 offensive linemen, if I'm not mistaken. So that's good to see. I still would like to see someone out of the transfer portal, maybe 1 or 2 on the offensive line, because I think that is an area of need. And excuse me, even though there have been 16 players that signed, there's still room to add more to this class. This was the early signing period, the first day of the early signing period. And then, of course, there's the regular signing period at the beginning of February. And there's still time in the transfer portal to potentially have players transfer to Toledo for this class. So still more can happen and probably will happen. But go ahead and check out that list on the UT official website, and you'll see the full list and all the players and little bio on each player and what they did in high school and so forth. So check that out. All right, so we're going to really quickly switch over to give an update on men's and women's basketball. And we'll start with women's basketball, who just continues to be on a roll. They defeated Oakland 74-44 the other day. They are now 9-2 on the season, entering conference play. Kara Goss led the Rockets. She led the way with 13 points. There were 3 players in double figures for scoring, and 3 more with 8 points each. So 6 players that had at least 8 points in the game. They host Western Michigan on January 4th at 7 p.m., and that'll open up conference play for them. So they finished the non-conference season at this point, and they'll open up conference play in January, early January. The men, they're still playing well too. They're 8-4 now after a nice victory at Vermont, 84-72. Vermont's a solid team. I believe they were 6-7 coming into the game, so they fell to 6-8, but they're a solid mid-major team. It was a nice win for Toledo. JT Shoemate led the team with 19 points. There were 4 players in double figures, including Shoemate, Cedric Milner, who had 18 points, Ray J. Dennis with 16 points, and Dante Maddox had 12 points. They still have one more non-conference game left. Just under a week from now, they will host Lourdes University, and then they'll begin conference play on the road at Ball State on January 3rd. The Ball State game will be televised on CBS Sports Network at 7 p.m. on January 3rd. So, that's it for today's episode. I hope you all have a great holiday season, and we'll be back in a couple days with another episode. Thank you.